Okay, this is part two of reacting to Sully and Danelle. I can only take so much of sitting up. So I did an hour before, and I'm gonna do the rest of it now. It's like a dry. I watch their videos, and it's as if I were debating with them on what I would do if I was sitting there talking to them. So I'm gonna listen, and I'll pause it at points where I feel like needs addressed.
Hit with a knife in your chest, you don't get a minute to recover, and it may have legitimately taken the Devin's breath away initially, and he never was able to regain his breath because he bled out pretty fast.
I was stabbed right in the heart. He died instantly. According to what the doctors were saying on the stand, he lost his life pretty much instantly. It cut the aortic.
Same with Damon. I don't think Damon was even awake when this happened. Um,
I think David was trying to get away from her, in my opinion. That's why he crawled the 25 feet away. I don't believe that he tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Mommy, mommy." I don't believe that for 1 minute. But there's things on the supporter side that I don't believe either. Like when Darlie was interviewed by Bill Parker. I don't believe for 1 minute that she said, "If I did this, I don't remember." I don't believe that. Bill Parker seems to creep me out. Plus, I would know that Darlie would never say that. If she did do that, she would never, that would be like admitting to it. And Darlie Key says, uh, oh, they recorded it, but they didn't get what they wanted. But Darlie Jr. says that there was no recording device in that room. But I'm going to let them go.
Obviously, he was laying down on his belly. His stab wounds were on his back, and so he never even saw it coming. When he did stand up and push on Darlie's shoulder, then she remembers coming to in a panic, and she felt very scared, like very panicky, but she didn't know really what was going on. She remembers seeing a figure leaving the living room and going through the kitchen. At that time, she gets up and kind of follows the guy, because she still does, like, her brain is not processing what's going on. She has no idea that this man has just attacked her. She doesn't even know.
For her brain not to be processing, the reason she keeps saying that she picked that knife up on instinct. So if your brain is not processing things, your instincts are not there either. She said she picked the knife up off the utility room floor based on an instinct. I instinctively picked it up. Darlie Key says in the show that I just put up, Women on Death Row, uh, that she picked it up to defend herself.
Know if this is real or if this is a dream. She follows as he leaves. She sees him go through the laundry room door, and he drops the knife. As she gets about halfway through the kitchen, she can see the knife on the floor. She picks up the knife out of instinct and puts it on the bar.
She told Jimmy Patterson that she was standing at the end of the bar, where the place where you see the knife in pictures where it was set on the counter. She told Jimmy Patterson she was standing at the end of that bar, and she saw the knife. Jimmy Patterson stood there in the same spot, and he looked over, and you wouldn't have been able to see the knife on the floor, he says, and he was taller than her.
But I do not think that she was asleep through the entire process. I think she was subdued, or it just happened really fast, and as she's coming to, she's not able to really formulate, like, her brain's not really functioning at full speed at that point.
No, absolutely. I mean, even just getting woken up in the middle of the night, you're not even fully functioning. It takes you a few seconds. And the only thing, I think.
Well, Darren heard that glass break, and his ass was fully functioning because he jetted down them stairs to take care of his babies. That's fully functioning. He went straight. He probably would have went to Damon first, but she was going Devin, 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 Devin. You see him keep saying that. His story hasn't changed. There was one time where he slipped up and said Darren, 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 Darren. But his instinct was when she heard him yell, when he heard her yell, was to jump up out of that bed and run his ass down there. They say that she was on the phone for 43 seconds before you could hear Darren in the background.
I think our theory about it being a fast and quick attack is that most of the time knife attacks are quick and fast. They get in, they do the attack, and then they leave. So we're just saying that based on
All right, most of the time, she says. Where do you get your statistics from? They get in, they do the deed, and they leave. How many cases have you studied where somebody got in a house, did some stabbing, and left? How many cases are there of that? And if you guys know the answer to this, comment for me. Comment under this video.
previous other crimes that are similar to this. Of course, none of us were there. We don't know, and like that's part of this case.
Hey, they finally got something right. We don't know. We don't know. I don't know. I'm open to uh suggestion. I am teachable. If they come up with something that makes me feel like Darlie's, you know what, I was wrong, Darlie's innocent. If they come up with something like that, I'll be the first to say it. This is a very controversial case unless you look into it. Like I said, I want them to come up with something that if they can't convince me, a redneck from Ohio, then how are they going to convince the court? Like, would you want Sully or Danelle to stand up for you in court, Darlie, Routier?
There are some things that people will just never know. Like, we don't know what Darren and Darlie talked about that night. Darlie says they talked about this, and Darren says they talked about this, but really, we weren't there. And like you said, Darlie's perception of that conversation might have gone totally different than what Darren got out of that conversation.
Well, we know what they wrote. We know what they told us. But Darren's perception was, my wife asked me for a separation. That's very clear. That means there's something going on with that marriage. And as far as, like Cyrilda had told me that things weren't perfect. Beja told me that she had wanted things were not perfect. And then Darren came out in 2002 and said things were not perfect within that marriage. I'll stress again, Dr. Philip Resnick, he's the expert on filicide. He's actually from Ohio. He lives in Shaker Heights. This is a clear case of spousal revenge filicide.
Conversation. Okay, so she said she followed. She said she followed and went into the utility room after the ban, but no blood pattern supports that. Well, there is low velocity blood splatter all the way to the laundry room, and then actually,
It's not low. No, those are drops. They don't have tails. Let me see if I can find a picture real quick. Now, this is kind of close to the area that she was talking about. The wine rack would have been right over in here. This is the end of the counter. You can see that these are drops. All right, there's one with a little bit of a tail right here, and another one with a little bit of a tail right there, but they're drops. There is the vacuum cleaner roll marks. Let me see if I can find some more. Now, on this side of the bar, we don't know what side of the bar that she said she followed him after him, but on this side of the bar, you don't see any blood trail at all. But most of these are just spots. Waddell said that Darlie was standing right in this area here most of the time that he was there. He's just standing there. You see a few blood drops, just drops. These don't have tails. Let me see if I can find some more. We can clearly see drops right here. She stood there for quite a while. And when she leaned over, there's a drop along here. And when you open up these cabinet doors, there were blood drops on the inside of that cabinet as well. The drawer that she grabbed the towels out of was right here. It was right under this. And you see drops there. Drops. Like she wasn't moving. Now this is actually inside the doorway of the utility room. farther, a little bit farther back. But what you see here are drops. And those drops mean that somebody was just standing there, that they just stood there. They would have a tail on them, a directional tail. And the Rowlett Police Department and David Neighbors, he says that she said in one statement that she walked after him, and then in another one she said that she ran after him, and then another one she said that she chased after him. So what they did is they put some dye on her feet, and they had her walk a path on some paper, and they had her run a path on some paper. Those tests determined that she walked. She walked. She didn't chase any intruder. You can hear Darlie Key in the video I put up, women on death row, say that she picked up that knife to defend herself. So let's hear what they got to say.
If you look in the laundry room, she says when she bent over to pick up the weapon, that
The weapon was not in the laundry room. The weapon was on just about probably 6 or 8 inches outside of the utility room door, and there was no splatter. Tom Bevel and James Cron both dropped that knife with Tom Bevel used human blood, and they dropped that knife on that linoleum floor, and you should get splatter. And there was none from a knife drop. There was none from two different investigators.
that's when she noticed that she was bleeding from the neck because it dropped blood onto the floor. Is that my understanding? You're kind of nodding your head like maybe no.
No, she realized that she was bleeding whenever she walked past the mirror in the kitchen, which is directly across from the sink, and she saw it. She felt the warm on her, but she didn't feel the actual knife attack. But it was when she was towards
Feel the knife attack. And if you go back to the Lisa Gibbons show, Darla Key was telling Lisa, the doctors told me that there was just no way someone would be able to bear that kind of pain. And then 30 seconds later, she said she felt no pain.
the sink is when she realized she had been cut. When she turned the light switch on, she sees there's blood. She doesn't really know what's going on. And then she sees herself in the reflection of the mirror, and she said, this right here was like a gaping wound. So it was pretty alarming in itself to see that she's got this gaping wound across her neck, and she's able to see that the boys are laying on the ground. Damon had kind of followed her. She tells him, to stay where he's at, not to come into the kitchen because she doesn't know if that guy has left the garage or not.
So if Damon had followed her, which she says is, I don't believe that he got up and followed his mom. I don't believe that. I believe that he got up and tried to get away from his mother. So we can look at that as far as the timeline that they come up with the 9 minutes, where Mr. Maverick says, the medical examiner said on the stand that Damon could live no longer than a maximum of 9 minutes, when that's not what was said. That's not what was said. He actually died in the ambulance. I don't believe Damon got up, was calm and like that, being mortally wounded the way he was. I don't believe it.
She didn't even know how.
Why didn't she just grab Damon and pick up her babies?
Why didn't she just grab Damon and pick up her babies? Why didn't she just do that?
Didn't have the capability to. She had a stab wound on her right arm, and why I don't.
Does have a stab wound on her chest right here. Some people think that it's part of but it's a separate wound.
It's a hesitation wound. It's not a stab wound. It's a hesitation wound. That's because when she sliced her neck, that shit hurts. If anybody knows the Jodi Arias case, Jodi Arias said that she wanted to off herself, and when she tried to do it that way, she stopped because it hurt. That hurts. That's a hesitation wound. And that's the way it was described by the people who looked at Darlie.
So she was struck in the chest.
Yeah, she did have a stab wound on her left chest area.
That's not a stab wound. It's a slice. It's an incised wound. It's a hesitation wound. It's not a stab wound.
There is some, DeMaio says that could have been a continuation of that stab wound, but
hesitation. But DeMaio says this. The medical examiner for Bexar County, Vince DeMaio, says this, but I don't hear what she says. Now, keep in mind, too, that Vince DeMaio worked a whole lot on the JFK assassination, and I can't say this enough. He said that the shots that killed Kennedy did not come from the Texas School Book Depository's sixth floor, but that they came from the Dow Tex building across the street. You decide.
DeMaio, his interpretation of this wound is that it really was a stab wound, not a slash. Like it wasn't, the knife wasn't laid flat against her neck.
Now, DeMaio did not, and I'll repeat this again, he did not look at Darlie. And even on the stand, on cross-examination, he was questioned about that he didn't look at him, and he had to admit that the people best to make these opinions are the people who actually looked at Darlie. That came out of Vince DeMaio's mouth during trial testimony. And again, I can't stress enough. They keep saying, oh, that Alan Brantley, that criminal profiler, he just looked at pictures of her. How's he going to know? He just looked at pictures. But they're okay with DeMaio just looking at pictures. DeMaio has made a living off of testifying in court cases. And I'll remind you all of this. James Cron did not get a fee for sitting on that stand. He did not make any money. He just testified to what he saw. He made money during the consult, but he didn't make money while he sat on the stand. He did that free of charge.
Sliced. It was, in fact, an attempted stab wound, and Darlie was able to kind of defend his arm off enough that once it touched, it didn't go as far in as he would have wanted it to, and then it was
also states that if you're able to, you pull. I mean, your body will automatically pull you away from that, weapon. So we've got lots of questions coming in. We might not get to our timeline today, but that's fine because we're here to answer questions, you guys.
You're a non-supporter. They're there to answer questions.
So people say most of the time people bring their own weapons. It's really hit and miss. There's a lot of people that take weapons from inside the house. So I feel
Well, here's what I would consider. Being on the other side of the law and looking at this case, they feel like Darlie was targeted, right? They feel like that the person came in there with an intention to kill. So why not bring your own weapon? Tommy Lynn Sells, you can look at interviews of him. They took him back to some of the crime scenes, and Tommy Lynn Sells is a serial killer. He had his own special knife that he would bring. But there were other times when he got in the house and looked for a weapon. But it seems to me, just using logic, that this wasn't, if they intended to kill, they would have been prepared. They would have had gloves. They wouldn't have cut the screen. It just seems like that cutting that screen would be too noisy.
We know that Richard Ramirez did that. We know that the Golden State Killer did that. We knew that the Axeman of New Orleans did that. We know that the Villisca axe murderer did that. They all took weapons from inside the home because.
How can you call somebody an axe murderer twice? What, they just go in and hope there's an axe in there? I don't get it. I don't know. I know a couple of these cases she's talking about. I can't refer to them because I don't know what she's talking about here.
If you are somebody that is leaving a crime scene and the police pull you over and you have that weapon on you, not only bringing your own weapon to the scene gives more information to the police about who you are, first of all. Second of all, it ties you somehow and can bring contamination.
She's absolutely correct about that. If the police pull you over and you have that weapon, there's a stabbing and you got a knife in your possession. She's correct about that. I'll give her that.
Third, every person has knives in their kitchen.
Yes, and a lot of crime of opportunity.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah,
The other chat, this is directly at you, Danelle. How do you know Darren wasn't involved? Why do you believe that?
This I'm interested to hear. because she has to skirt. Nobody in that chat has asked her about the multiple people. She has to skirt. I haven't heard this before, so I'm just doing this raw. But she has to skirt right here. I'm gonna see if she does it.
So my opinion is based on my personal experience with Darren, and I've known him from the time I was 3 years old. I've known him, and he was nothing but kind. He was never violent. He was never mean. He was really proud of Darlie and the boys. He loved.
He's overly proud of Darlie. There are stories that he helped put him pointed a gun at her because she wanted to leave, and he put a gun to his own head because she wanted to leave him. There's stories of that. These are in the books. I don't know how verifiable they are.
Loved his family. There was never any kind of behavior that would indicate he was a violent person or intending to hurt somebody. With this kind of a behavior, you would expect to see some kind of violence in their past. Darren had none. Now, do I think that he could have set up some kind of or spoken about setting up a robbery? Absolutely, it could have happened. I don't know. And
What do you mean you don't know? He wrote down that he did it. See, that goes back to the first part of this where I asked her about Darren. When she told me that, she said, I'm not talking about Darren. I don't know anything about that. I don't know. If you're looking to find out who killed your nephews and who tried to kill your sister, you cannot skirt around this. You absolutely cannot skirt around this at all. I don't know. Which means she knows that they made it up because it was appeal time.
And it makes a lot of sense that could have possibly been a thing. Like, did he talk about it to somebody at his shop or at the
He didn't say he talked about it at a shop. What he said was, I told somebody that I wouldn't mind if my Jaguar came up missing, and that person stole the car. Again, he can't name that person because then he'll be held for liable. They don't want Barry Fife. He didn't want the police to go question Barry Fife or these alleged multiple people that he said he asked to break into his home, because then it would come back that no, he didn't ask me to do that.
neighbor shop or yes, the wrong person overheard it and took it upon.
No, the wrong person. Listen to this. This is so stupid. And I've heard this before. Okay, so somebody's over here and Darren say, I wish somebody would break in my house, steal all my furniture, put it in U-Haul, and take it away, and then I'll pay them later out of the insurance money. This is why the wrong person, right, doesn't work. Because if the wrong person overheard an insurance job, they're going to want their payment. The wrong person. Okay, let's say that she's right and the wrong person heard this. They get inside the house and they see that there's people there. Oops, I can't do my insurance job now, so I guess I'll just kill these fucking kids. Wrong. If Darren sent somebody in there for a robbery, he alleged that people weren't supposed to be home when this happened. So as soon as they get in and they see the two kids laying there, Darlie laying there, the TV being on would be a deterrent to me. But as soon as they get in, that would be a time to turn around. Well, this is not a good time for a robbery, and let me snatch this golden watch on the way out.
Themselves to hit the house themselves and not return any of the
things. Well, you have to look at the things that were inside of that house that were of value. The most expensive thing that he had downstairs were the drapes and that jewelry that was on the counter. He had a basic big screen TV, which was real popular back then. He had a leather set couch in the living room. He did have the other room was set up. The formal dining room was really set up really nicely, But nobody brought a truck to haul this stuff out with, Danelle. Use your brain. Look at you go suck in a fly right here.
I don't know. I mean, that would also kind of go to support the fact that this was a crime of opportunity. Somebody broke in to rob their house, not thinking they needed a weapon because Darlie and Darren were supposed to be traveling in the next couple weeks and the house should have been empty. So did this person
House should have been empty. Okay, if the house should have been empty, the TV on, you get in, you see that the house is not empty. You turn around and fucking leave. If you're only there to rob. That's what you would do. Because apparently this intruder made it all the way to the kitchen without anybody waking up. They had to consciously walk over to stab Darlie and kill the boys who weren't awake. No, it makes no sense. Not logical.
get just the wrong date? Like Darren's car wasn't there. Darlie's car wasn't parked in the same spot it normally is. So
It was parked out front. The Nissan Pathfinder was parked out front. She drove I believe it was a 94, a green colored Nissan Pathfinder. You can see that car behind her in the Silly String video. And Darren said it was parked in the front. And so let's say somebody is watching the house, right? Somebody's watching the house because this is the date that they're supposed to break into the house. So they're sitting over there in their black car across the street. They're watching the house and they see Darren and Dana get in that truck and leave. Wouldn't that indicate the best time to strike?
it definitely could have looked as if nobody was there. Did that person think that nobody was there and break in and just grab a knife on the counter as an opportunity? Now they see that.
Now they're trying to break in, right? They're trying to rob. They're not going to grab a knife if they don't think there's anybody there. They won't need to. They think nobody's there. Why would they grab that knife? Why would the knife rack was as soon as you come in the utility room door into the kitchen, immediately off to the right, there was that knife rack. That's been like one of the first things they saw.
Darlie's laying on the couch. They can see her blonde hair from where the TV's shining
Leave.
in on the couch.
Right.
Leave.
Now they've shifted their motive from being a robbery. Well, now they know Darlie's beautiful because if they know Darren, they know Darlie. Then it becomes a crime of opportunity. And I'm just
How can you tell if somebody's beautiful or not if they're laying there in the fucking dark? I really am tired of hearing people talk about how beautiful Darlie is. She just absolutely, well, she looked fake to me. I don't like a whole lot of makeup. I don't like fake shit on a woman. I like them to be naturally beautiful. Now, an example. Sully's got all this shit on her, right? If you've seen a picture of her without all that shit on her, you'd know why she wears all that shit on her. Danelle doesn't wear very much makeup. I think she's cute. She doesn't wear very much makeup at all. And when she does doll herself up in some of the shows, she does not look like Danelle. Well, I mean, these red ass lips are fake as fuck. I don't want fakeness. I don't think Darlie was all that. I never did think Darlie was all that. She's a nice looking woman, but she's just not all that beautiful. Darren is just weird.
going to rape her or whatever that might have been in their head.
Okay, it might have. You're speculating. Okay, well, I'm going to rob this house. Nobody's supposed to be home. I don't have a truck. First, let me grab this knife because I think nobody's home. Oh, wow. Wow, look at that blonde hair because that's all you'd be able to see if she's laying on her left side. Look at that blonde hair. I think I want to screw the shit out of that blonde hair. Oh, there's two kids right there. Well, I better get rid of them first. You know, get the fuck out of here, man. Doing these things aggravates me. They aggravate me.
And unfortunately, Devin and Damon were laying on the floor and were just collateral damage. Did Devin get stepped on? Did he get kicked? Possibly. He did have a bruise on his ear, and that would have not been something they expected to see on the floor, or two little boys. So
So if Devin got kicked, right, enough to bruise his ear, would that not wake him up and alert him? You said that he didn't make a sound.
it's definitely something that kind of supports that theory that it was a robbery gone bad or a sexual assault gone bad.
But they left first of all, if it was a sexual assault, they would have used the children for leverage, which is what they do in crimes. They use the children for leverage. Say, you submit to me, or I'm going to hurt these kids. And in a sexual assault, there's almost always commands. Commands. At least call her a bitch or something like that. Say, you do this now, shut up. There's always commands. And Darlie never said that the man said anything to her until she was in regression therapy.
And some people say there were two weapons. I believe that it was the same weapon used on both boys, but in
It was. All right. She got something right. Now watch. She's going to change it. She's going to change it.
my opinion, I do think he sliced the screen with his own pocket knife, but you're not going to go carry out a homicide or a murder with a pocket knife. I mean, most men carry pocket knives. We talked about this a little bit yesterday. There was deer hair found around the screen area. There.
Uh, there's deer hair found all over that area because at the end of Eagle Drive, Darlock, back in '96, it's different now. There was an open field at the end of that Eagle Drive. There was an open field, and Eagle Drive dead ends into an open field, and that's where deer were. Also, uh, Drake's likes to hunt now. On his MySpace, it had things of hunting. But deer hair can fly around with the wind, just like a duck feather can or anything else. But I don't hear what she's got to say.
There were no deer. You guys were not hunters. No one in your family said no one had any kind of taxidermy, deer rugs, deer skin, anything like that. But again,
There was deer all in that area. Let me frickin' show you. So if you start on Eagle Drive right here, right there's where the fountain used to be. You start on Eagle Drive. I'm gonna stop just here in the alley real quick. I noticed something in the show Women on Death Row that I posted yesterday. Lieutenant Dean Post made the comment because there used to be a steam house right here, all right, that they paid $9,000, and it had two motion detector lights on it right here, right. It seems to me that the police weren't so worried about the motion detector lights on the steam house, which would have been right about here, right. But he made this comment about these motion detector lights, and they were there in '96. You can see in videos where Cron's standing in the back here. You can see him right above his head. But what Pooh said was that as soon as the officers opened the gate right here, which was hard to gate, that those lights came on and stayed on, and they lit up this whole thing. So here for years, I was kind of thinking that the motion detector lights, that they were talking about mainly were the two that were on the steam house, which is not there anymore. They were on, I don't know why whoever bought the house took that out, but no, Sergeant Dean Poos, Lieutenant Dean Poos from the Rowlett Police Department was talking about these ones. He said if anybody was to come out of that gate or go near that gate, those lights came on. But what I'm trying to talk about here is at the end of Darlock, at the end of Eagle. It's kind of far, but not really. This right here, let's do an aerial view. See if I can do that. Well, this right here, beyond this, is all open field. Let me see if I can. See, they put a few things there now, but this all was open field, right? And there was many deer that was in that area, right? And the winds blow, and it's going to blow it over into the Platte.
Yeah, you're right. But
Sorry.
again, like me and Arabia said yesterday, it's one of those things where nothing is ever, you're not ever going to find a sterile crime scene. So I mean, there's deer in the Rowlett area. So again, it
She knows that.
just becomes something that it's like, does it belong to the crime scene or is it,
Doesn't. Unless
so
a deer
there
came
are
in there and did it.
theories behind one.
Like their buddy Horror Lad said, "Oh, I think it was a deer, and it is a deer that lost one of its socks, a reindeer." An idiot.
The two intruders. I know Rich and Mystery Maverick have talked a lot about that. If you guys want to go check that out, go look at Rich Prater, just Prater on YouTube. Then somebody said adrenaline would have to pick up her kids. Again, I feel like we don't know.
Danelle says that's a good one. But even Rich Prater, like I made a mistake and I put it up. I was arguing with Danelle about a dog finding that sock. Because I always believed that a canine dog found that sock. I don't know where I got that belief from, but I went on with that for years. It was a canine that found the sock. She goes, "Nope, that's not what happened." I said, "Oh, yes, it did. Yeah, it was." I mean, I was adamant with her about that. And I always believed that too. And it seems like Rich Prater and Mystery Maverick believe that because their contention was that the dog sniffed up to the sock and he stood stationary. This is what Mystery Maverick and Rich Prater said, that he stood stationary, and that was an indication to them. That was an indication to them that a car picked the intruder up. And I'm correcting both of them. But see, I had that fact wrong. And so I had to make a video, and I came back and I said, you know what? I was wrong. Danelle was right.
I mean, we don't know what that's.
Okay, here's what I want to say about that. It is really easy to put yourself theoretically in that position and assume that you would do all these things. But in real life, when you're in a stressful situation, especially something like this, I mean, her children are dying at her feet. She can see that this is a terrible situation and it's super traumatic, not to mention the fact that she is bleeding herself and could, I mean, she sees the severity of her boy's wounds. She doesn't know the severity of her wounds. She is assuming that she's going to die.
Yeah.
Yes.
Darren said in one show that she didn't even know she was hurt. She wasn't worried about herself. That's what Darren said. Most of the non-supporters that follow this case would know that.
And the nurse, I also want to say this. I've not made this comment before, but the nurse that called my mother and told my mother that Darlie had been attacked and that the boys were dead.
That's Karen Neal from across the street. Called Darlie Key at about 3 in the morning, and Karen Neal was a friend of theirs. The nurse, Karen Neal, that's who she's talking about. She lived over at 5608 Eagle.
Told my mother Darlie is probably going to die too. So for a well-trained nurse that saw Darlie and her injuries in their rarest form before anybody else got to her, there was no coverage of the wounds at all, and Karen Neal saw her in that state. Karen told my mom she thought she was going to die too.
She said Darlie's probably going to die too, based on a simple observation. You know, intuition told her that Darlie's probably going to die too because she had a neck wound, right? Right. So it's okay if you're a professional in the nursing field and your immediate intuition is, your immediate thought is, Darlie's probably going to die. It's okay for them to make that assumption without even looking at the evidence, without even going through anything else. Darlie's probably going to die. But it's not okay for James Cron to do that in his profession. There was no intruder. It tells me that there was an inside job. So people that are in professional fields base a lot of their stuff on intuition. Now put that in your pipe and smoke it, Danelle. How come that's okay for Karen Neal to say that, but it's not okay for James Cron, whose field is in crime scene investigation, and Karen Neal is a seasoned nurse. Even a seasoned nurse can't do anything because Terry Neal died in 2007, her husband.
So in your brain, you have to assume point that that nurse was concerned about her wounds enough to think that they were going to kill Darlie.
In your brain, you're going to have to assume enough that James Caan took one look at that scene and felt like there was no intruder. You have to do that, right? If you have to believe what Karen Neal across the street, who didn't do any investigation at all, if you have to believe what she said, then you also have to believe what James Caan said. You can't have it both ways, Danelle.
So that implies that they were pretty raw, pretty nasty, pretty ugly, and intimidating wounds. And Darlie does.
No, it implies it. Yeah, it implies it because she was bleeding everywhere. Karen Neal didn't see the wound after it was cleaned up. Well, she probably did, but I'm saying she didn't initially see the wound after it was cleaned up. So when Caan walked in there, that implies to him that there was no intruder. And to this day, we have no intruder. And Darlie didn't die, so Karen Neal was wrong.
Definitely kind of
About his was a neighbor of theirs that Darren went to get, and she came over. Now they didn't let her inside the house, but they.
Now, why did Darren go to get her? Because he needed help. Darlie wasn't helping him. You can read this story, and at some points he says that she was helping, but at other points he says she wasn't. He wouldn't have got up and left them kids there to run and get a nurse if Darlie was helping. What was Darlie doing when he ran across the street? She doesn't say anything about being down helping them boys. Terry Neal and Karen Neal, their testimony is that Darren was pounding on that door. Terry grabbed his gun. That she and Karen and Terry and their son Nick came down to the door, and Darren was going, they stabbed my wife and my kids. What was Darlie doing while he ran across the street? What was she doing? She wasn't doing CPR. How many towels do you have to wet to put on a kid? What was she doing during that?
And Darlie, I believe, was already sitting on the porch at that point because one of the EMTs was looking at her neck and getting ready to load her into the ambulance right after Dave.
Now, if Darlie was on the porch at that point, Karen, she's right. Karen did come over and Darlie was on the porch. I'll give her that. That's where they were bandaging up her wound, and they give her a field shock test where they press in on your thumb. She wasn't in shock.
We did talk about this last night. They picked him up and put him in an ambulance, although we believe he was unalive before he probably ever even reached that ambulance.
You can believe that all you want. The EMTs say that he died en route to the Baylor.
But they did try. So to get blood pattern to all these quote unquote stage places, but no pattern behind the man is what somebody said is suspected. Arabia. They can't hold on. Then she said they can't provide one, let alone exiting out the window, leaving zero evidence. And see, I disagree with that because we know there was a drop of blood in the garage. That was
There was a speck of blood on a garage sale sign. Cron said he didn't see it when he walked through the first time, and there was red on the floor, which was determined to be Kool-Aid.
collected by Catherine Long. Cron told her not to collect it. She either didn't get the message or Lynch told her to collect it anyways. But there is
it was not processed.
Well, and they said Karen Neal did not examine Darlie. No, she did not examine her.
They're gonna double down on Karen Neal here. I want to hear what this chat person's got to say.
Her as a nurse.
Okay, here's what I'm going to say. Karen Neal saw Darlie before she had her wounds repaired. Karen Neal, as a nurse, you are assessing every patient you see, especially in a medical situation.
As a crime scene investigator, you are assessing everything that you see inside of that home.
Whether you're trying to or not, your nursing skills don't just go away
Whether you're trying to or not, your crime scene investigation skills don't just go away.
When you see somebody that's hurt, you're still a nurse, and that
You're still a crime scene investigator. And you're honing in on what the hell is Sully doing here? What is she doing here? She looks like you got a bullet on or something. Sorry, I just got a dirty mind.
role will come first. You're always a nurse, especially
You're always a crime scene investigator, especially when you're in the middle of a crime scene.
in a medical situation. Was she with her stethoscope listening to Darlie's heart rate? No.
Was James Cron down looking at all the evidence before he made that assumption that there was no intruder? No.
Let's be real. But was she looking at her wounds and evaluating her wounds and determining if the amount of blood pouring out of Darlie's neck is enough for her to die from?
But was James Cron looking at the scene? Was he looking at the garage? Was he looking at the mulch and determining in his own head whether or not there was an intruder or not?
Yes, she was looking at that. And yes,
Yes, he was looking at that.
she was concerned that Darlie could die from her wounds. So, yes, she was assessing her. She may not have been documenting it. She may have not
Yes, James Cron was assessing the scene. He may not have been documenting it.
been paid for that nursing job she did. But yes, as a nurse, you are assessing everybody you meet, especially in a medical situation.
But yes, James Cron was assessing every part of the scene. He told everyone told them to collect all the knives, blah, 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 yada, blah, blah. Sully looks like she's catching an O here.
Somebody states that if Darlie knew that Darren was setting up this thing, why wouldn't she have stated names? But Darren didn't come out with that information until much later.
Darren came out with that information in 2002. And a lot of people believe that because this is what they want people to believe. They want people to believe that Darren led some people to that house to cast reasonable doubt. And if you look at some of the supporter, I'll go through it. Some of the supporter comments. Well, I believe Darren set up an insurance job. Darren said it. That's what they wanted. They wanted you to think that. Darren did that in such a way that he could make that assumption without giving details of like the names. The names. If I was in that family, the answer to this crime would be in who the fuck did you ask? Who did you ask? And they don't push him for that. They don't. They should. Because they know better.
Right. Yeah, I think it was.
People are talking about the bread knife. How was it left? We'll get into that on another.
Let's see if Danelle skips right out of that whole question about the names.
We'll get into more forensics as we continue the crime. Not using a pocket knife to injure or subdue someone proves the motive was murder when they grabbed the largest knife out of the block.
Could it have?
It doesn't prove that the motive was murder. Now, just a little bit ago, Danelle said, oh, they come in for robbery and they changed their mode.
Whenever you said his intent changed from robbery to grape,
Yeah.
then why did they pick the biggest knife? And I think that the motive was there. And I think that actually Darlie
You can't really tell what size the knife is from a knife block because it's usually just the handle sticking out. I know in mine, if I want to serrate it, I have to keep picking it up to see which one is which because all the handles are leveled out and one's not bigger than the other.
knew this person in some capacity. I also believe that person had been in the house before.
Yes, absolutely. Ding, 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 ding. Survey says that person had been in the house before. That's right. That person lived in that house.
And knew the layout of the house. And that house was a new build. And we don't know how many people had been in and out of that house, but they had lived in it for 3 or 4 years.
They had it built in 93 from the ground up. He got that house for a good deal. Actually, in 1996, he got it for $130,000. And it sold recently for $469,000. He got a good deal on that house.
3 years.
But there's been speculation that one of the construction workers, kind of became obsessed with her, and there's been
Darlie is not. I don't understand it. I don't understand the obsession with Darlie Routier. I don't see her as anything but a decent looking female. Not enough, she wouldn't be something I'd laminate a picture of and put in my shower.
some forensic analysis that I've seen. Like I said, don't necessarily agree with it, but I've seen it out there about the way the crime was committed. It shows that the person was more likely to work in the construction industry.
More likely to work in the construction industry. If they were more likely to work in the construction industry, dumbass, they would have just took that screen off because it wouldn't make as much noise. They would have took it off and set it to the side instead of cutting it.
So that's been a possibility that I've heard. All right, let's get back to some more questions.
Well, I want to say about the
Yes.
Darren thing.
Okay.
Darlie never once heard Darren discussing any insurance scams. That is not something that anybody in the family had any pre-known knowledge of. That
Except for Robbie Jean Key. Robbie Key, Darlie Key's husband at the time, had some background in theft, grand theft. And I believe it was Don Davis's book, where Darren was sitting there asking Robbie Jean Key if he knew anybody that would break in his house, and Darlie heard it and stomped out of there. Beja also told me that Darlie knew about the insurance scam with the car. And Beja told me, and I don't know what to make of it because I don't believe this insurance scam thing at all. But Beja told me that they both knew that they both were thinking about having the house robbed and that they wanted her to be part of it. She didn't say that on the stand. She said it to me. And at least 250,000 people heard her say it because that's how many views was on that video before it went down.
we didn't know that was a thing. We didn't know it was going to happen. We didn't know he'd been talking about it. Darlie
But you know it now. So what you gonna do? You know it now.
had no clue. So if Darlie had known, she would have probably told him, absolutely not. We're not doing that.
Probably. I found out about things I didn't know about back then. The Darren had like this insurance scam, this insurance hit, whatever you want to call it. And he told Barry Fife that he didn't care if his Jaguar come up missing, and Barry Fife stole the car. She said she didn't know about it. That doesn't make any sense. Like if somebody steals my car and I come home, how's my wife not going to know about it?
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think that, so there was some sketchy people that Darren knew just because he worked beside all these different shops.
No, he worked beside Auto Medic, which was Barry Fife's shop. Right? And Barry Fife and Ben Claiborne, they had been to Darren's house. They had smoked pot and did cocaine over there, according to what they say, with Darlie. Darlie there.
Yeah,
And sometimes some of those fellas were not always in the up and up. And
How do you know? What makes you see? You always say they're not always in the up and up, right? Prove it. Give an example of how Barry Fife or Ben Claiborne weren't on the up and up.
And could he have been talking about an insurance scam with one of those people and one of those shady people overheard it? It's very possible, but it was not something that was talked about in front of Darlie, around Darlie, an earshot of Darlie. Darlie had no idea.
It's a fucking lie. Because he asked Robbie Jean Key at Darlie Key's house. She heard it and she stomped out of there.
knew for 1 second, if she had any inkling of a thought that she might know who was involved, we would have searched top to bottom, inside and out, and there would not have been any stop in us. And
You're not searching for any of these multiple people. Your video should be about Darren asking these people. That's what they should be about. You don't pressure him for that. And if that's the case, Darren led some people, to the house to kill his kids, to rob his house, to kill his kids, kill Darlie, whatever. You shouldn't be so, well, Darren wouldn't do this. I knew Darren. That's why on his Facebook today, anybody go look at Darren's Facebook, look at the likes, look at the comments. Not a single one of that family has put a like or anything on his page. Not a single one of them.
until we had them figured out completely. But we did not have that information beforehand, and we didn't have that information for many years after as well.
But you got it now.
To follow up on that question, somebody asked, what was the life insurance policy on Darlie?
So
Do you know at the time?
Darlie had 200. No, Darlie had 50,000. Darren had 200,000, according to what was written down in a box just a few feet away from Devin.
Darlie had a $250,000 like.
Nope, 200,000.
That was the total value of her life insurance at the time. Devin and Damon both had a $5,000 policy.
That's correct. They had 5,000 apiece in case something happened to them, and the Sorella told me that the funeral was 13,000, and that she paid the other $3,000.
And sorry, my dog was just throwing something in the air. And then it's a toy though; it's not a chicken. And then Darren had like $750,000 in life insurance. So if you're looking at it from a Darlie is guilty standpoint, it would have been Darren. He would have been the target if it was a monetary thing, because he was worth the most money, and he also spent the most money. Like, he was the big spender in the family, not Darlie. So
Darlie didn't do much. And when the money ran out and she couldn't shop and people were calling about, come get your car, and bills are adding up, and she couldn't do the things that she wanted to do, she's stuck in the house. That could lead to some serious frustration with her.
So that would have fixed two problems. You're taking out the big spender and you're getting a bigger payout. But that was never the motive. There was never any kind.
I don't believe that the motive was financial gain. I believe that the motive was financial stress. I think she was stressed out. Life has been hard for so long now.
Kind of desire for anybody to cash in on a life insurance policy. That was never the case. So
I agree with her there.
And somebody said the severity of her wounds just show how much blood should have been in the path if she was following the intruder. There is a lot of blood.
There is not much blood. I just showed you pictures.
My opinion, though.
Oh yeah, that house was covered in blood, and that was something that the paramedics also mentioned, was that there was blood everywhere. And
there was blood everywhere in that room, and in the small part of the kitchen, and in the hallway.
In every one of their statements, they annotate, or they specifically make reference to the amount of blood that was everywhere. So it was definitely a messy crime scene. It was definitely a lot for those paramedics to take in and kind of,
I think some of those paramedics, and I don't know if this is in testimony or hearsay or what, but I heard that a couple of those police officers and EMTs did, court or like therapy through the police station because of how bad. But the pattern.
Yeah, there probably was some therapy after that crime. I know that the 911 operator, that she quit her job after that. I know that she's probably right about there being a trauma therapy available.
of hers don't match the path of following the intruder. Well, let's do BPA blood splatter. Let's do that another day because we've got about 10 or 15 minutes left on this live. So I think we should just finish asking up any questions, and then next time we'll kind of move on for what we had planned today, which was but so she was arrested on June 18th, which was 2 weeks. So the crime happened on the morning of June 6th. She got out of the hospital June 8th. What day was the services for the boys and the
So
video?
the viewing was the 8th. They actually
Okay,
made Darlie late to the viewing.
Yes, okay, remember that.
And I'm assuming that the actual funeral services were the next day, but I can't remember.
Right, that the Rowlett Police Department were questioning her, and they made her about 2 hours late. Which I'm tell you what, I'd have been pissed about that.
Remember for certain.
I believe they were the next Saturday, and then I think they didn't in between them like putting the boys this sounds bad, but putting the boys in their caskets and then doing the graveside service to actually bury them. Was there time in between there? Did you guys go straight from the service to the memorial? Do you remember?
We went straight from the
service.
Are you talking about the memorial for Devin's birthday?
Yes.
That was several days later.
Okay, that's what I thought. So you guys went to the gravesite and did the grave site a few days after the funeral service. So just so everybody knows, I'm a mortician. So normally,
I thought you were a crime scene expert. You're a mortician. I thought you were a crime scene expert, and here lately you're saying telling people that you're a private investigator.
and most people have been to funerals, but just to kind of spell it out for you, normally when somebody passes away and they want to be like buried and not cremated or something else, but they want to be buried, we get them ready, put them in their casket. We have a viewing. The family comes and does the thing, and then the next day there's normally a service of some sort at the church chapel or at the funeral home, whatever the family decides. And then sometimes the family decides to go straight from the service straight to the memorial, and sometimes they'll wait like a week. And that's fine because the bodies are embalmed, and so you can wait to inter them. So she's out of the hospital June 8th. At least the wake or whatever you want to call it that night. Saturday morning was the service, and then a few days later, you guys went and did the memorial service actually at the grave site, and that is where the Silly String video plays. Then I think we should just end this with the Silly String because I think that'll give us a really good jumping off point to get to next time. So let me just give you my thoughts about the Silly String from a funeral perspective. I've been to tons of funerals, tons of grave sites. I've had people bring liquor, pour liquor out. I've had people shoot fireworks with ashes in them. I've had people mix ashes and put them into tattoos. We have jewelry made out of ashes. People play all kinds of different music. I've heard Rob Zombie at a funeral. I've heard like the Deftones and Metallica, especially for people that love to like ride bikes and we're big.
Trying to justify a little bit the Gangster Paradise song, which I don't feel was appropriate for 5 and 7 year old murder victims. Just talk about bodies lined in chalk. I don't think it was appropriate. I would have done better. Uh, for me, for my funeral song, I would like for it to be the Verve Bittersweet Symphony.
Motorcycle, not like a bicycler, but like motor,
But I think if you take the Silly String out of the equation, the Silly String party, but she did look like she was happy. She looked like she was relieved. But if you take that out of the equation, then you still have the evidence that shows that Darlie Routier did this.
And that was their life, and that was how they want to be remembered and buried. And so to me, I don't think that it was inappropriate in any way from my perspective, but I understand how the public would have viewed that. And I think if actually that would have happened today, because we've come kind of further in our acceptance and maybe handling death. You know what I mean? Or more things being acceptable. Like we know cremations are now more popular than they used to be. It's become less of a religious tradition and more about that person's life. Just
Yes.
as like history has gone on. So, like I said, I've seen all kinds I mean, I've seen full-fledged parties happen. And
She's probably correct. I just want to notice. I noticed something here while she's talking. See this necklace that she's wearing right here? Just imagine a knife going across her throat right here and right there. How would that necklace stop it? Because she was laying on her back, which is the way that she drew herself for James Cron. She was laying on her back, and she didn't draw any eyes on the picture. And he said, "Oh, that's funny because the eyes are the mirror of the soul." But you see how that necklace is laying? How could it have stopped the wound? The wound would have been about right in here. Just observation.
so to me it doesn't seem inappropriate, the silly string video, and I would have put no weight into that besides the fact that Darlie stated that the motive was for other kids to feel comfortable and for them to be able to say bye to the boys.
Well, I don't put a lot of weight into the actual party, but the way she was acting, she was smiling, snapping her gum, clapping. Uh, you can watch Darren in that silly string video. Right when Darlie starts to spray that silly string, he does a double take. He's got his hands in his pocket and he takes a step backwards. Darren is not singing. He's wondering what the fuck. You can tell by looking at him.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was
Arabia said the
dramatic.
character assassination is totally irrelevant. Agreed. So
The silly
Yes, character assassination is totally irrelevant, but it seems to be a thing with her family. When it comes to non-supporters, that's what they do. They character assassinate. They're mentally ill. They're 600-pound people that eat ramen noodles and live in their basement, or they've got back problems and they want to live off other people's money. That's what she thinks.
string video has absolutely nothing to do with the crime itself, but it really did impact Darlie's outcome, unfortunately. And basically, that was all orchestrated by a 16-year-old child. My other sister, Dana, is the one that brought that silly string. And this was not.
Sister Dana was not the one that was spraying it. And your mother, Darlie, said that the silly string was there because Devin and Damon love silly string. They play with it all the time. But now you're gonna put blame on Dana, right? It was Darlie that was spraying it.
At the gravesite. At the funeral, this was at a memorial for the boys. This was directed at the boys. It was for the boys. And the silly string came in as an afterthought from the 16-year-old sister, whom had just promised Devin that she would have silly string at his birthday party because she didn't allow him to have silly string when she was going to get married, and because that would have stained her white wedding dress. So she promised that they would have silly string at his birthday party or in the future. So since we weren't going to get to have any more fun times with the boys, this was it. That was all she had left. So she did what she thought was appropriate. And this is
Makes sense. I mean, I'll give her that. I don't put much weight into that silly string either, except for the way that Darlie was acting. She could have at least faked it. Not a single tear. And then if you look at the interview after the gravesite, that was creepy too. Was the interview after the gravesite a part of celebrating the life of Devin and Damon? Gossip is the biggest evil. And when she said, if you knew Devin and Damon, you would know that they were up in heaven having the biggest birthday party ever. And they wouldn't want us to be down here being. That is weird. That is weird. That would not be able to come out of my mouth if that happened to my kids.
a 16-year-old. Darlie Lynn allowed it because at that point we were just trying to survive. We didn't know what was right and what was wrong. And for anybody in my comments to say no mother would do that, put yourself in your own little glass house and shut your curtains, because in real life you don't know what you would do. You don't know what was.
I simply agree with her here. You don't know what you would do, but I know how I would feel. I wouldn't want to be in front of a fucking camera if that happened to my kids talking about gossip. And when they talk about the intruder, say, we're not going to go into that. That I wouldn't do that.
What was in her head or how she's going to process that grief. We had just been at a graveside prayer service.
Right.
We had spent hours crying, and we were cried out at that point. It's 8 days later. Devin had been killed and taken from us right before his birthday. We had been hysterically crying. We have grieved.
You guys already had the birthday cake ordered and
everything
she had
was
the whole
ordered.
thing ready. Yeah.
It was already scheduled. This was directed at allowing the children to bring those toys that they had already bought for Devin. We were going to donate them to the local foster care home that was in Rowlett. That was Darlie's idea.
Local foster care home in Rowlett. There's not one today. There wasn't one back then. She's talking about the Rowlett Needy Children's Fund. It's a fund. It's not a foster care home. It is not, and it never has been.
And then Dana brought the silly string in because Dana wanted to honor them and fulfill that commitment that she had made to Devin, that he could have silly string one last time. That's all it was. I also want to say about the gum smacking, Darlie had been started on some antidepressants considering what she had just gone through.
His exact statement was, everybody kept giving me pills. And when you look at what they found in the house, they found all kinds of different pills in the house.
And in that first couple weeks of any of those kind of medications, one of the side effects is commonly dry mouth.
Yeah.
And a lot of the times, like Darlie didn't have a bottle of water on hand, but I think my aunt actually had gum in her purse. So that's where she got the gum from. And that wasn't, like, when did chewing gum make you guilty? And there was
it's like all of you guys also celebrated right along with her. You know, Dana sprayed the silly string. I think maybe you did.
Spray it, because I got a picture of her doing spraying it at Baby Drake.
I don't think Darren did. I think he kind of.
Darren did. You don't see any video of Darren spraying silly string. Watch the silly string video. Darren doesn't even sing. They're singing "Happy Birthday." He doesn't sing.
Let you girls kind of have your bonding sister moment. So does that make you guilty of killing the boys because you sprayed silly string?
Exactly. And if you ask,
we know that the silly string does not make Darlie guilty. It just didn't look good. We can agree on that.
Some of those people that are so absolutely set on the fact that she is a psychotic killer, they're going to tell you that we are also guilty because we support her. But
no, I don't think you're guilty because you support her. I think you're guilty in the way that you support her. You support her with fabrications. You support her with out and out lies. You want to save her life, and I don't blame you for that. What I do blame you for is disrespecting the fact that Devin and Damon are in the ground. And they can't say, no, my Aunt Danelle's lying. They can't do that.
I don't understand the thought process behind that. And
if you lie, the law is, if you lie for a murderer, you are guilty. You are now an accomplice.
And that's not realistic because there's not any reason why every single person watching this wouldn't support their family if their family was wrongfully convicted.
I support my son in the fact that I still love him. He's a convicted murderer, killed a child. He's doing life in prison for that. I support him as my son. But I don't talk to him much. I text him here and there. I don't send any money. And I don't let him forget about Braden. But I support him because I love him. You can't turn that switch off. You know, if there was a switch to stop loving your child, I would probably hit that switch. I know that what he did was terrible. There's been times where I've referred to him as a piece of shit for doing that. I support him. I stand beside him, but not behind him. I won't let any of my family forget about Braden.
And you
And
guys
no
have
matter
to
what,
remember that
what
this is Danelle's truth.
yes.
This is her story.
She can have her truth, but she can't have her facts.
Danelle's not on trial, you guys.
And
You
no
know,
matter what
Danelle
anybody
is
thinks,
supporting her family.
yes.
Yeah, you have to remember that, Sully, when you're mad at me because I'm doing what I do here. You have to remember that I'm not on trial for what my son did, but you sure put a fucking video up about it and got it all wrong. You sure said, well, look at this guy. And Danelle's comment was, well, I don't understand how he can make any comments about Darlie Routier when his son did that. I called her out on that. She said she thought it was morbid.
Yes. And I 100% with all my heart and soul, without any shadow of a doubt, think that Darlie is innocent.
There was a time when I thought that my son was innocent, there for a minute, because he kept telling us he was innocent. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. But once I got to looking at the evidence, I was like, he's fucking lying. To this day, his mother and his grandmother will say that he didn't do that crime. He didn't commit that crime. They could see him on videotape doing it, and they wouldn't believe it. But I know better because I looked at the courts, the documents, the police investigation.
And I am going to do everything in my power to support an innocent person that was wrongfully convicted, as every single one of you should do as well. Never would I tell my child to sit down and allow something wrong to continue. I would tell them to stand up and fight with it and use your whole chest.
How many other innocent people do you support? I'll wait.
Fight with everything in you if something is being done wrong to somebody you love. Because we don't let somebody go down for no reason. Like,
Right.
we're going to support and we're going to fight until the right thing is done.
What about Dennis Stahl? He harmed your sister, as told by her own words. Are you going to fight to be sure that that wrong is corrected? Or are you going to shh? I'm not going to talk about what happened to Darlie because it didn't happen to me.
That's always been how I've raised. I was never raised to be quiet and let things just go.
Haha. Well, they sure let that just go, didn't they? Darlie said on the stand that her stepfather, which is Danelle's father, began molesting her at age 8, and it continued into her teen years. She said she told her mother, and her mother didn't do anything about it. And to this day, they won't touch that subject. But here she is talking about righting wrongs done to your family.
You
If
know,
it's
you
wrong,
guys have a very strong family of women, definitely. I mean, people that know your mom know that she can be a force to be reckoned with. And she's made it very clear. And honestly, in my heart, I believe 100% that Darlie's innocent. And I think that's really a great way for me and you to talk about this. But then, me and Arabia, maybe once she gets her followers up, we can do, three, do a panel and talk about it. But we want there to be a discussion. We're tired of hateful comments, harassment, people saying that you're lying. Like, everybody.
She does lie. She does. If you're tired of lying, of being called a liar, stop lying.
Has their own theories. There, like we said, there's certain things about the case that we will never know. Like, I mean, there are cases where unless you were a fly on the wall, you didn't know everything that happened. And yeah, that's why exactly, you stick with the evidence and not with the character of Darlie.
That's exactly what I'm sticking with. I mean, the character does have a lot to do with it because her character changed quickly from September of 95 on to May 3rd. Uh, 96, you can see her character changing in what she wrote down.
That's a very good point to make. I think that's a good point to end on. You stick with the evidence, not anything character related to Darlie as a person.
I want to get out there that Greg Davis and Toby Shook never sat with Darlie and had any kind of conversation.
Because the prosecution isn't really supposed to sit with the defendant. They don't have to. The prosecution never spoke to my son. They don't do that. They don't have a deposition for them. They have no reason to sit and talk with the defendant.
With Darlie.
And those were the two prosecutors.
Yes. And they developed this persona of this very mean, vile, self-centered, irrational, psychotic person.
Toby Shook sure did to have a conversation with Darlie when she went on the stand. And she couldn't even compose herself during her testimony for her life. He had a conversation with her. Liar, 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 she said on the stand. Showing her anger on the stand.
And then they took that image that they created of this person and they made that person as mean and as evil as possible to everybody that would listen so that it was understandable or acceptable to think that this sweet little tiny blonde could potentially kill two of her own children for absolutely no reason. And that's
what would there be a reason for killing your two children? Tell me.
Call it clickbait, but that's what the news used. Her character assassination brought in way more viewers than them being like, "Oh my gosh, this."
And they didn't know.
Well, it's more you get more views on the Darlie did it because more people believe she did it based on evidence. If you look at the comments under any Darlie Routier video, except for Free Darlie because they don't allow the comments, or except for RJP because they don't allow comment. But if you look under it, more people agree that she's guilty than do that she's innocent. And you get a couple that come in and say she's innocent, and that's it. You have groups of people that gather together in private without anyone being able to dispute what they're saying. And they go, yeah, Darlie's innocent. Mm-hmm, she's innocent. Yep, she's innocent. I agree. Yep, she's innocent. Okay. Yep, she's innocent. And they do it all the time. They don't open it up for people to challenge them. And when people do challenge them, as you can see from the long text that I have with Danelle, I was being just as kind as I possibly could to her. And as I did not accept what she was saying calmly and civilly, I became a moron. I became mentally ill. I became a sick person. I became disgusting. Because the first stage of denial is anger. Anger. She calls me a stalker.
It came from people that didn't know her. Anybody, I would challenge anybody here that's watching this to find somebody that really genuinely knew Darlie that didn't like her.
Right.
There were people that didn't like her. It was in the testimony.
Somebody that knew Darlie that thought she was capable of even hurting an animal because she's not. That's not who she is. If you find
said like definitely 100% valid issues with the handling of the case, very valid issues. And like we said, even though Arabia, she believes that Darlie is guilty, that doesn't mean that we cannot have a discussion, you guys.
Why not? Why can't we have a discussion?
We want everybody to be kind in this space. We want to be able to talk about this. I am here to give Darlie, or to give Danelle and Darlie support. I do talk to Darlie. She's a sweetheart. Last week, after we escaped from the fires and everything, I told her, hey, let me put some money in your commissary. You know what she told me? She said, Anna, you do so much for so many other people. Why don't you go treat yourself and get a pedicure or something?
Would you like me to use this cash?
Instead, like, what? if you know what I mean, like what person. And last time we did the live, she was Instacart. She was having you put together an Instacart for one of her friends that's moving into a new home.
It's because Darlie's got lots of money in her account. Once she was complaining that she only had 4,600 in her account. She's got lots of money in her account. People send her money all the time. So whenever somebody says, she used to send letters out with JPay slips. And I've got some of them. She used to do that. She used to ask for money, but now she doesn't because she's got plenty in her account. They only let her spend a certain amount of money every week in the commissary.
Yep.
She still
She's
does
very
some things.
generous.
She's
Yeah,
very
she's very generous.
generous. And she
Yep.
did a
And she's
lot of things for a lot of people. And people have asked me, people that stood by her, or, do her friends still stand by her? I said, every single person that knew her, Julia Clark, Karen Neal, up until the point she unfortunately died. Um, Melanie Waite still goes and cleans up the boys' graves. These were all people that knew her very well. Now, we can talk about Barbara in another episode too, because we could go into Barbara for probably an hour.
We can go into Barbara for longer than that.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
and because that's very convoluted. But anybody that does, and the fact that Darren's parents and Cyrilda Routier, who was a lovely woman, said that she did not believe that Darlie was guilty to the day she died, I think states more than anecdotal stories. And I've read in
Yeah.
some of the other.
You got to understand this too. What is Cyrilda supposed to say? Because she gained custody of Drake. And if she really believed that Darlie was guilty in her own head, she's not going to portray that around Drake. Cyrilda was a CASA worker, CSB, Children's Services. That just says that Darlie had a lot of people fooled.
Other groups that, oh well, they had the police called on them because this and this and this. You have to remember, guys, after this happened, this family was torn apart.
Right, right. But, Dana punching Darlie Key and Darlie Key attacking her and Dana saying to the police that she's a crazy bitch in October of 96.
And Dana,
It
I
was
think, felt, and I don't want to step on toes, but I think she felt really guilty about the silly string incident. And
She felt really guilty about sitting at that window and having a cigarette and leaving that window open. She also felt guilty about wanting to go home and be with her boyfriend that night, even though Darlie says she asked Darren to send her home because she wasn't feeling well. Dana feels guilty about leaving the house that night when she could have been there.
she was 16, 17 at this time. That's hard being a teenager. Now your sister's been taken away. Now you feel guilty because you supplied the silly string that character assassinated her, that they took and spun into such a wicked, vile thing. And so, yeah, every parent, every family has fight.
It wasn't only the silly string that worked on her character. On Mother's Day of 1995, Darlie and some of the other mothers got together and they went to see the Chippendales, which is fine by the, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Women like to look at men just like men like to look at women. There's nothing wrong with that. But what she was questioned about on the stand was about Dennis Stahl being the one that took the boys overnight that night. And so you're going to let the man who molested you take your boys overnight? And Darlie interrupted with half a day. And it was asked to her again, so you're going to let this man who molested you take your boys? And she said the only reason she let them go with him, is because Danelle was with them. Danelle will not talk about that.
Fights. Every family has, and that's what we were talking about last night. When you look through the list of evidence, there's evidence in their house that's, yeah, they had adult toys and stuff. Who cares?
That's not a big deal that they had adult toys. It really isn't. What's a big deal is that when she pulled Beja over in the hospital to specifically go to the house and get those adult toys because she was embarrassed about that. She was embarrassed about it. She didn't want them to find those adult toys. She was embarrassed. And her response to that was they found 3 different vibrators, pornographic tapes. Pink one, a beige one, and a blue one. And pornographic tapes. Darlie's response to that was, and she said this with clarity, I will not apologize for loving my husband. Sorry, but if you got 3 different vibrators in your house, you're not loving your husband with them. What is he doing? What's she doing? Using them on him? But no, there's no big deal about that. That's normal. So we don't have any in our house.
Who cares? Anybody's
sex
house you
life.
go through, you're gonna find shit. Everybody is an adult, and those are all legal things. She was a married woman. She had the right to do whatever she wanted.
And no
So-
infidelity. They loved each other. They had a good, healthy sex life. There was no infidelity. There was no outside relationships. There was
According to Beja.
no questionable
So really,
interactions
it
with
does
other
come back
genders.
to like, I mean, what is the motive?
It doesn't have to be a motive. The motive, in my opinion, was financial stress. Spousal revenge, filicide.
There is no motive. There was absolutely no motive. And there's always a motive. I don't care what anybody says.
There's always a motive. What motivated her? Stress. Life has been hard for so long. Financial. They were backed up on bills. The money wasn't there. They were overextended. That's a factor that got into her mind.
I know you don't have to prove it in the state of Texas.
You don't have to prove it in any court.
But there is always a reason why somebody does something, especially at this level. It's not like stealing a candy bar. You know what I mean?
Somebody
There's
said that-
always a reason.
Well, there's actually a motive for stealing a candy bar. Because you fucking like candy and you don't have any money.
Right. The toys weren't used against her. No, they weren't. But I'm just stating that since I
Fred said they
posted
were
the
allowed.
evidence, since I posted the evidence logs, you'll see them in there, and I'm just stating. I could have redacted it, but you know what? I think that we should be telling the truth here. There's nothing to hide. Who cares?
We've
Who
never
cares?
hidden that.
Then somebody said one time I had my purse searched and they found one. How mortifying.
That would be so bad. That's like a fear. Going to the airport and something in a pocket somewhere. Can you imagine? Whew.
Oh gosh, can you imagine what airports see? Well,
Oh,
I
I'm
think on that note, it's about 7, so I know you're finishing up at your kids' games. My kiddo just came in here with a baseball bat. He's probably about to beat me up.
He's ready to go play, Mom. He wants ball.
Are you want to go play? You want? He wants to go blow bubbles. We're really into bubbles right now.
Oh, sweet baby.
And hide and seek. And my new parenting hack is when we play hide and seek, I have like 2 or 3 places in the house where he can't find me for a really long time, and so I get like a 30-minute nap. See, I'm like, somebody could take this and say and twist this around on me and be like, "You're such a bad parent." I mean, literally,
Right.
on one of my other friends, or somebody that I'm friends with on TikTok, these people were mom shaming her over feeding her kid a Lunchable, telling her you're
There's
feeding
always
your kid
something.
chemicals and you're sitting
Shit, my daughter loves those pizza Lunchables.
there eating sushi and you fed your kid a Lunchable. What a terrible mother.
You give them what they want. That's what they ask for. My kids like those ramen noodle soups. And I try to show, hey, this has no nutritional value in it whatsoever. Look at the amount of salt that's in this. But that's what they want. They're kids.
I jumped in those comments just like you said, Danelle. If there's somebody saying, I said, you're really going to mom shame somebody over feeding their kid a freaking Lunchable? I said, get out of here.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Kids.
She dad shamed me one time when her and I were on a live, and she was saying, "Well, I think you molested your kids, and they just haven't told on you yet." And my kids are teenagers, and their room was within earshot. And I said, "Hey, Jada, hey, Kylie, come here for a minute. Please, come here." It's, "Oh, you're going to wake up your kids? You're going to wake up your kids for this?" "Oh, yes, I definitely am going to wake up my kids to confront you. They have a right to hear what you're saying, as if they would allow anybody to touch them without telling." And she knew what I was going to do. And my daughter told her that she was disgusting and that she needs to get a life.
Or you've got maids and nannies that can cook organic fresh farm food for your kids every day. Like, literally, the air that we breathe in is worse than what's in some of the food. Everything has chemicals in it, everything.
Even if your kids are fed an organic diet, they're going to eat a chicken nugget from the back seat or a booger from their own nose. It does not matter. Kids are going to eat whatever they
It's called pica, a booger from their own nose. My kids like chicken nuggets too.
want.
Cool.
Yeah, you can control that. And let's get real. Like in real life, everything is not organic and clean. You're going to have to survive on a Lunchable every now and then. So what?
Exactly. So just mom shaming is just
Look, and this mom, she's talking about mom shaming while her son is literally begging her to play. He's on her chest. It's no big deal to me, but yeah, some people will take that and run with it. It's not like she's supposed to hang out right now and just rush and do what her kid wants. No, she's an adult.
I just don't like it. We all
Oh, now he's crying. That's different.
raise kids differently. I definitely feel like that played into this case with the character assassination, mom shaming Darlie about what she did and didn't do and how she didn't do things, and the fact that she took pride.
There were a lot of times that Darlie would let the kids be out riding around in the streets. There was one person that said that she told Darlie about her sons being on the bikes out in the streets. She just ignored her. I don't see that as Darlie's a killer. I see that as she didn't want to be bothered with her kids, which kind of leads up to what happened.
Pride in her own image does not mean she didn't love her kids any less. I take a lot of pride in my image. That's just who I am. It's me. It's my authentic self.
Yeah, you're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with being proud of your appearance or feeling good about yourself. That's a good
Be
thing.
a person outside of being a mom.
Yeah, what's wrong with
Want
that?
to be a woman and a wife.
Yep, there's nothing wrong with that.
And a
I think that's
friend.
actually healthy.
It is healthy, and people that shame, I feel like, don't understand that. So that's. Anyways, I went a little off topic there at the end, but I'm glad that Darlie's doing well. We'll be back next week, and just keep the questions coming. Why stick to evidence and testimony that connect the dot? Yeah, it's irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. Some of the stuff that they tried to, and some of these anecdotal stories that you read about Darlie, I'm like, this could be some random Smo Joe that's a 16-year-old kid behind a keyboard. We don't know
Yeah,
who's
you
writing
don't.
these stories. I mean, come
Yeah,
on. Somebody
there's
wrote
a
a
lot of
story that I saw. Oh, one time I saw her at the grocery store. She was yelling at her boys. Yeah, I probably would be too. Like, kids are
I
crazy
mean,
at the grocery store. How many times do you see parents have to discipline their kids at the grocery store and stick them in the cart and say,
yes.
sit down?
They were like a year and a half apart. They were really close together. They were
They're like
just,
little
a
troublemakers. They were
5
like
and
partners in
almost
crime.
7. Right.
Yeah.
And I will say that Darlie was not a yeller. She did not really discipline the boys. She may have used her mom voice and corrected them, but she was not a yeller. Me, today, I for sure yelled at Kaysen and Ridge, who are 15 today and 7. I for sure yelled at them.
Happy birthday, Kaysen, by the way.
Yeah, there was a lady that was within earshot, and she turned around and looked at me, and I said, sorry. She was like, girl, I get it.
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, if you're a mom, you get it. Like, it's. And before I was a mom, I judged moms too. Now I'm like, ooh.
Yeah. Yep. Everybody does it, I think.
Excuse me.
So, all right. Well, this has been a great topic. I hope that if you did get a question, that it got answered. We do have somebody kind of trying to help us moderate questions so that we can get through things. And next time we'll just do the episode we planned on today. All we have is time, right?
That's right. Nothing but time.
Nothing but time.
If we
But
did not
I don't
answer
want
your
Darlie.
question,
I
end
want
it.
Darlie to serve as. I want Darlie to not have any more time. I'm ready for her to be out.
Agreed. Soon enough. We're working on it. But if you asked a question and I didn't see it, send it to me or Sully in a direct message, and we can address it either in a video or in another live.
Sent Sully a direct message that said, "Come, let's have a civil debate about the case like adults." No answer.
So normally we do our lives on Sunday around 6ish. We both have families and lots of stuff going on. We missed the past couple of weeks.
Okay, that's enough of that. An hour and 40 minutes I spent on that. That's my spin. That's my reaction to Sully and Danelle. Sully is now a private investigator, by the way, according to what she says.